Hello my gorgeous makeup loving friends, it is Sunday and rather unbelievably I did have the wherewithal to sit down and film a Swatching Sundays because I figured I did one last week and it was to do with the Cheeryep Freya86 collaboration, and there was a second palette in that and I was like, okay, I did the one that I feel like everyone wasn't talking about, which was the Dreamcatcher, so now it's time to talk about the Star Core palette. Now, the collaboration that was put forward was between Cheeryep and Freya86, and I had thought that the previous palette that I discussed, Dreamcatcher, was part of that. It actually wasn't. Massive thank you to those who commented and clarified that to me. I really appreciate it. But this one, the Dream Core, is actually part of that. I do have to say, however, that this was gifted to me in PR by cbeauty Mall. I super appreciate it. A massive thank you to them. I am also an affiliate. So if you look at this and you do want any aspects or components from this, you can use my code Teresa for money off. I'll have all of the links and descriptions, etc. down below in the description box if you are interested. But the Star Core palette looks like this. It's quite matte heavy, it's very deep, it's very dark, but there's kind of like a warm element to it, and then there's sort of a cool element to this. I will, of course, be swatching this. If you have not seen a Swatching Sundays, let me explain this to you. Essentially what I do is I swatch the palette and I manipulate the light. So I'll have it in very high lighting situations and very low lighting situations. I'll also mix around cameras. So I go between filming on what is currently a Canon, and I will then switch over to an iPhone 14 so that you're getting a little bit more context, a little bit more information. I also try to get a little bit of natural light in there. Unfortunately, as of today, filming, it was very dark, very grey, so you don't get a lot of sunlight, but I still feel it gives you some level of information. The kind of second part of Swatching Sunday is to see what these look like when you put them on a primer, when you use brushes, etc. And again, seeing what they look like under slightly different lighting. So if you think that that would be useful and it might give you a little bit more information on this, then this is the video for you. Do please keep on watching. Alright gorgeous friends, so I have the Star Core palette here, which is the collaboration between Freya86 and Cheeryep. Now I had thought that the Dreamcatcher was also part of that collaboration. I was actually wrong. They've packaged it as though they are, but they're not. I still say, however, that this beautiful palette and the other beautiful palette actually work together very, very beautifully. But of course, I have the stencil on here, I have the palette here, I have clean fingers. Let's get into it. So these are our first four shades, and as you can see, we're very, very matte heavy. They do look a little bit dry, but you know what? That will only tell you so much. It's in the swatches and the blending, etc. that we see these things. We'll also say that this shade in particular, because it's more of a pastel shade, that will end up being more dry. Whereas if you look at these two, much more of that standard creamy formula that you would expect from Cheeryep. Then we look at this particular shade here. It's quite flaky. Very, very nice. Really interesting sort of a texture to it. But let's see what it's like swatched out. And I mean, look at that pigment straight off. Can I just say that would be a beautiful blush? That is, oh my God, look at that. Look at that. For such a pale shade, you're getting a lot of pigmentation from this. Now I've used this palette already. I've worn it to work and it is stunning. As you guys know as well, I will also be building these up to full opacity so that you can get the best information on what these look like. And this is where we're starting to see some absolute divinity. And this is where I'm going to get a bit annoyed with cameras because I feel like they can never quite capture the things that I'm seeing. So on the camera, you can see that this shade that I'm flexing on my index finger, it looks very pink to you. Here, it looks, there's like a mixture of like a pale blue, a little bit of yellow, and the pink is in there as well. It is so beautiful. Obviously, I'm going to mess around with the lighting so that we can see this a bit better. This is a gorgeous silver. Absolutely fabulous. I love this deep red. That's gorgeous. This one, oh my God. Right, you're seeing it as a sort of a coppery. The way that I'm seeing it is like a blue, purple, green, little bits of bronze. It is. Oh, and I've worn this and I got so many compliments on that. This is one of those like, wear it alone, nobody will care, because it's like a big enough thing. Like, it's not that nobody will care, but they'll just be like, oh my God, it looks so beautiful, and you'll have done minimal effort. I love minimal effort. So let's see what these look like. You know that generally when I try these shades on, like these sorts of shades, I like tapping them on, but I want to see if we can build them up. We'll check them later in terms of like tappy because that's what we do. Look at the pigment on that red. That's pretty darn good. And that, look at that, one pass. I hate it. I hate how much I love this. That's very unhealthy for me. Okay, I will say that this one probably hurt me the most to swatch because it had that sort of a star imprint on it. And if you look at the palette now, it's gone. Oh, my stupid heart. That was so difficult to do. But there's a really nice sort of a blue sheen to that. So it's primarily matte, but a little bit of a blue sheen. Then we have a really nice pastel-y blue. I feel like that links in with a couple of the more recent Cheeryep palettes that I've got. Very, very nice. And just this really gorgeous, it looks almost like a royal blue, but there's like little bits of purple and almost like a pale pink in there as well. It's very, very unusual. And then just a really nice, almost green toned, khaki toned brown. Very, very different. I like it. So again, let's see what these swatch like. Normally I'd bring you out into the sunlight, but there has been no sunlight because it's Ireland. And I think our summer is officially over. It has just been raining. Like I looked at the weather forecast and it was like 100% chance of rain. And I was like, oh, okay then. So probably we'll go outside just to see what it's like in daylight, but we're not going to get actual sunlight. And then we're on to our last 4 shades. They are so beautifully gothic, such gorgeous mattes. Look at that sort of purple. It's so gorgeous. Now this palette does have a few lights, but it's mostly darks. This is why I was saying it can be used in conjunction with the Dreamcatcher. But I can see why the Star Core kind of got so much attention, not just because it's Freya86's baby, but I mean, you're looking at these swatches and you are kind of going, oh, right, take my money, you little somethings. I don't know. But let's just see. I mean, these are just very frustratingly beautiful. I love that you have your kind of warm tones here, and then down here you have the more like deep, dark, more cool toned. Like it's very interesting. So there we go. That's the whole thing swatched. The thing that I do want to talk about here is that these shades, particularly the mattes, very, very buildable. Because initially they go on and you're like, oh, this is quite a nice light color, but you can build it up. So even though some of these are quite dark, when you go back and you look, you'll notice that they initially swatched a little bit lighter. So I do want you to kind of keep that in mind. It's a nice buildable formula. So let's remove this, see what the story is. Okay, so there was very, very minimal fallout, which is great. I mean, considering I was going in pretty hot and heavy because it swatches, it's not kind of very naturalistic as to how you would normally put these on. So in terms of the lighting that I have right now, if you've watched this before, you'll probably be able to tell me that right now I have a ring light at a 90-degree angle and 2 box lights. I have no other sources of light, but this is to give you an idea as to how both the mattes and the shimmers perform. And as I'm here looking at it with my eyeballs, I can see in particular these 2 shades really stand out to me in terms of the level of interest. They are quite different. However, obviously, when you have a couple of sources of light, it does kind of impact that. The mattes, very, very pigmented. They're showing up pretty nicely. However, as soon as you add in more light, that's where you start to see that mattes get a little bit more washed out. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to add in one more light just to see what the story is there. And this is for the purpose for anybody who might be using these, for example, for stage performances. And there we go, we've added in an extra light. It's an overhead light. I'd say a little bit more yellow toned, so keep that in mind. Like even the type of lights will impact things. Everything else I have more as like a white light, so that will probably impact things as well. As you can see from the camera, because I'm keeping a little eye on the viewfinder here, the mattes, super pigmented, definitely not washing out. Even with the more pale toned ones that are up at the kind of closer to my wrist. I was going to say up at the top, but as you're watching, it's down at the bottom. But for me, it's at the top. But you know what it is that I mean. They are still quite pigmented. I will also say, I feel like those like red and kind of, well, it's not really a red. It's more of like a pinky toned peach. And then there's an actual peach. I'd use those as blushes. I think they're really so beautiful. So they're coming off very, very pigmented. The shimmers are coming off there as well. Although not as dramatic, but we would expect that when we have a lot of light. And that is why we're going to start taking away some lights. That seems very symbolic as to what is going on in the world right now. So let's see what's happening there. I have closed the curtains, so all sources of natural light have vamoosed. They have gone. I've taken away the overhead light and I've taken away the 2 box lights. So our only source of light right now is a ring light. Now, of course, the ring light will disperse it because of the actual shape of it, but I do feel like you can see those shimmers pretty nicely. Now, the thing is with these sort of shimmers, particularly if they're duochromes, you'll see them that little bit better when there's actual movement. And I talk about this quite a bit on things like releases and rants, where I'm like, okay, you've given us very static swatches. I'd like to see the movement of these. And I think it's in instances like this where you can really see what the story is. However, I still feel like there's an additional condition, lower lighting, singular light, specifically a torchlight, where you can see this even better. So that is going to be our next condition, because I like being annoyingly thorough. And now I have a singular light source. It's specifically from my phone, and you can see the sparkles pretty nicely there. I'm moving around the source of light as well, just so you can see some of those shifts. So keep an eye as to how that's working, and you can see with some of those duochromes just how they're changing as a result of where the light source is actually coming from. Oh, it's absolutely so beautiful. I hate how much I like this. And of course, the closer that you bring it to the camera, the more you kind of see all of those sparkles and what's going on there. So do you see, again, just changing where the light is going, making it a little bit more dynamic, less static. You can see kind of the shift to the blues and the greens. It's just that little bit more like, oh, okay, I see what you're putting down here. And it's rather delicious. I would like some. Oh, that's so beautiful. I was actually listening to an Eddie Izzard book recently, and he was like, I don't like macaroni and milk. And I was like, who the fuck is eating macaroni and milk? But apparently when he was in boarding school, they did that. And I'm like, why did they not give you macaroni and cheese? That's the correct one. Although as long as it's not too cheesy. That's really off point, but I'm just like, this is delicious. I was going to say this is like macaroni and cheese, but I was like, only if it's done correctly. When it's done correctly, it's beautiful. And yeah, this is just stunning. See, again, shift around the light. You can really see what the story is with these shades. I put the light up a little bit higher. Ooh, yeah, there we go. Is it an exact science? Am I the best person at doing this? No, but I'll tell you what, I go in with enthusiasm to show you what the story is. Let's go slowly. Da 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 da. Do I do my own soundtracks? Yes, I do. Oh, sorry, I keep looking at that green one. It's the 4th one down on the wrist, from the wrist. See it? It's absolutely, like, I hate it. It's pure sarcasm. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now, obviously, I'm filming this on a Canon. That will also impact the way that these will look. So I'm going to switch over to my phone, which is an iPhone 14, and we'll see what the story is there. How does that look on a different camera? I know that this is not the point, but the moment where I turn off the flashlight and go straight over to my phone, I get a little bit of a shock because it is so dark. I'm like, oh my God, I am literally sitting here in the deep dark blackness. Now, I will say, I'm so glad I switched over to the phone, because I think there's certain things that you can see here that you couldn't see on the Canon. Let us talk about that black with the green sparkles. Shut up. Take my money. Can I just say, and feel free to disagree with me, in which case you are wrong, does anyone else look at that black and the green sparkles and just think of the Matrix? I say this as if I'm like this long-term fan of the Matrix. I only watched it for the first time in the summer with my bestie Daniela, and I just think that's like, it's so like, look at that, the movement off of it. Let's look at that shade as well. You saw previously on the Canon just how much that was shifting in terms of color. There's so much sparkle on that. Now that purple, see that one there? It's just below the silver. That one was really shifting and going towards green depending upon kind of where the light was. Now obviously, because the light source is a little bit more directed here and is dependent upon where the camera is, you're not seeing it in the same way. But you can also see here that the 3rd shade down from the wrist over on the left hand side, there's more of like a green base on that you didn't really get to see in the same way. And that shade up there at the top right,
perfect white. And even these mattes, look at how gorgeous and grungy they are. I'd get those, like that bottom 6. I'd have that as a palette all by itself. Actually, the bottom 8, just because I'm being greedy. Like, that is a cohesive palette. That is a cohesive palette. So it feels like you've 2 cohesive palettes in there, where one half is very warm toned and then the bottom half is very cool toned. And I really appreciate that. I think it's quite interesting. I am going to go into slightly different lighting now, just so we can see what the story is here again with the camera from my phone. Again, for more information, because I don't know, maybe it's the academic in me, maybe it's the autistic, maybe they're fighting, who knows. But I like to gather as much information as possible so that, again, we can make some informed decisions. Oh, let's zoom in and be weird. Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh, this feels like OnlyFans content, doesn't it? This shows my familiarity with OnlyFans. If I did an OnlyFans, this is what it would be. It would just be me smearing myself in these. I wouldn't be very popular, but you know, just is what it is. So yeah, let's check our next condition. Okay, so this is another new lighting condition. Again, I'm on my phone, but I've turned the flash off now, and I'm in a situation where there's very little natural light, so there's no direct light on here. You can see it's very dampened. It's not giving you a lot of information as to what the shimmers might look like. However, look at those mattes. Jesus Christ, they're very good. I'll just, look at that. Look at that transition into the light. Not that my hallway has a lot of light. It has a lot of like cat food boxes. That's, by the way, the cat food boxes for the strays. In case anybody ever wonders what my YouTube earnings go towards. It's towards feeding cats, stray cats, and I guess that's a whole other thing. I came to a charity recently and just gave them like a bunch of boxes, and they were like, oh my god, where did that come from? And I was like, yeah, my stray cats have gotten too fancy. They think this is too good for them. So, or not too good for them, too bad for them. Jesus. So I'm so distracted by how pretty these are that I can't even form sentences. But let's go and check what this is like in similar lighting, but with a different camera. Because again, more information. I like it. So I've shifted over to my Canon, and I'm currently in my kitchen where nothing is being cooked, but this palette does eat. And yes, I am quite happy with that pun. I have no direct sources of light, so there's no overhead lights on. And as you can see, there's a little bit of natural light coming in through the windows, but it's not like super big because it's about where the sun is directed from. This is the back of the house and the sun doesn't get that. But anyways, that is not the point, because look at these. They look like molten metals, and I'm very much enjoying that. I think that looks so gorgeous. I slightly need to move the camera so that you can appreciate this a little bit more. There we go. Because my arm was at a strange angle, but oh my god, look at those. Yeah, she's put together a beautiful palette. So as I said, we have no direct sources of light here. But you can still see these shimmers really, really well. This is how a lot of us would potentially be wearing these on a day-to-day basis. And as I said, this is not necessarily how you would apply them onto the eye. Some of us might tap them on, but I still feel like it gives us a decent idea. Can you see that black with the shimmer as well? No, I think that's meant to be like a little bit of a surprise. That's just for us to know. Other people don't need to know that it's the matrix on your eyeball. They don't need to know that. Let's see what this is like in indirect light, because I can't even call it sunlight. And we're going to hang out of the window, and I'm going to look at the grey abyss outside and hope that it might stop raining for about 10 minutes so that we can get outside and see what it's like in direct daylight. It's actually an extremely grey day. So much so that Darcy was like, look this, I'm not staying outside, you crazy woman. And yes, he does jump up through the window like that. So yeah, you'll see no Darcy outside. You might see some of the strays in a little bit, but I thought we'd just have a little interim cat content. Darcy? No. You can see he's the most cat-like cat. Does not even respond to his name. Absolute brat. But he's so beautiful. Look at his little pink mouth. Darcy, do you wish to say anything to your fans? No, he's like, go fuck yourself. I am the king and you're all but my silly little creatures. And then I went over to the other window to kind of film from here, and that's one of my strays. Ed. Yeah, he's like, oh, you've made eye contact with me. This is happening. So just be aware that I need to bring him to the vet. Anyways, that's not the point. But yeah, he will be there helping you watch these. So, oh, look at his poor eyes. Poor baby. And now we're in slightly more direct sunlight. Ed is just behind the window. He's monitoring how all of this is going. And you can see kind of sparkles here a little bit better. They're looking quite nice. I will say, I think almost under the indirect light, it's a little bit more impactful. That might just be me. Feel free to disagree, because that's what we do over here. We have like a little bit of debate. It's all right. Not a big issue. Ed is currently grooming his paws. But we'll go outside now, because it looks like it's actually stopped raining for a few minutes. So we'll see what the story is there. It has briefly stopped raining. However, there's a very vocal cat here who's just like, meow. Yes, yes. Now, I wouldn't mind, but he's been fed several times today. Now, we don't have a lot of sunlight, but I feel like you can still make out what the story is here as to how these would be in slightly more direct daylight. Ed is keeping an eye, making sure I'm staying honest, that I'm not BSing you. I'm going to do the standard thing of like, let's go into these and be really weird. Because we're not getting as much daylight here, you will see it's not as like impactful as you might kind of generally see it. But for those of us who are like further north up the equator, particularly around Ireland, England, etc., this is the sort of standard weather. So if this is what it looks like outside, I'm quite happy with this. Like, it is looking quite nice. What do you think, Ed? Does it meet your standards? He's like, yes, it is. I put my fur, put these onto my fur. They would look quite nice. Also, those are my flowers. And that's his little house, in case anyone cares. And yes, I know it's a little bit blurry, but there you go. And those are some more of my flowers. There you go. Less blurry. I think I was showing you my little fairy garden before. Do we approve, Ed? Yes. We're going to switch over now from being on the Canon to seeing what this looks like on a camera phone. Because again, overly thorough. I do feel like the camera phone is picking this up a lot better than the Canon does in this particular kind of lighting situation. Because look at the way that fourth one from the wrist is showing. You can see a lot more detail there. Ed is still keeping an eye. He's like, I do expect to be paid for this work. Because he has a union. You know? Now, that black, you know, the one that's just under the red, isn't it really interesting how you can't see the sparkles in this particular situation? So it does seem like that's going to be more for people who are like content creators and they want to mess around with lighting situations to get that exact thing. But I kind of appreciate that it's like that little secret that if I'm wearing this on a day-to-day, it's got to look like a black, but put me outside, or not outside, but under really specific lighting, and it's got to sparkle like a magic. Kind of appreciate that. But yeah, that's what it looks like on an iPhone 14. Very minimal daylight. Again, Ed is like, come on now, Teresa, get your shit together and please feed me. I wouldn't mind, but I've been feeding him, and then he's just like, no, this isn't interesting to me. So now I have to feed him my cat's food, which is Whiskas, and I'm like, oh, God, you're costing me a fortune. But look at him, he's such a sweet boy. He's like, yes, I slow blink at you. Yeah, I'm going to have to try and catch him one day and bring him into the vet. Anyways, that's not the point of this video, but yes, there you go. We'll obviously go straight in now. Well, not straight in, but you will go straight in. And we'll see what these are like with an actual primer base and see how they apply with brushes and blending, etc. Again, overly thorough.
We're now getting into the sort of nitty-gritty of the palette here, because swatches tell you one thing, but it doesn't tell you really how it blends, how it interacts with brushes, etc. And obviously, even the way that I do my swatches, I don't have a primer down beneath. So right now I have my arm prepped. I have a white base, specifically the MAC Paint Pot in Sink to a Whisper, and I have the palette here. And I have a couple of brushes here so that we can see what the story is. So I want to actually start off first with some of the more light shades, and I'm using a Spectrum, I think it's an A12. Yes, it's an A12. There you go. A bit disturbing that I know these things, but there you go. And I just want to see if I pat that down, what sort of pigment can I get here. Now, bearing in mind this is already on a white base and this is more of a white shade, And I'm keeping that bit there so that you can see kind of the contrast. And it's subtle, but you can see that you are getting your pigment payoff here. So I'm personally quite impressed with that. I think that's pretty good. So obviously this is the sort of a brush that you would use to put this on. I am trying to use the correct brushes for the correct things, but if you prefer to use these for other things, that's totally fine. Now, I want to see what the story is in terms of its blending around the edges, just to see how it disperses. And it does look like we get some nice kind of softness there. I will say that this pairs beautifully with the Dreamcatcher as well. I know it wasn't necessarily part of Freya's thing because it was sold as though the two were part of her collection, but it was actually the Star Core was hers. It was a bit confusing, but I do see how they can work together, so I do appreciate that. But you can see even just the difference there. It's a lot more of a cool toned sort of white, almost like a little bit of a blue edge to it, and then you can see where the primer is there. So you can see you get a lot of pigment pretty early on. And now I'm going to take another Spectrum A12 and I want to go into this shade just to see what the story is here, and I want to see how these two interact. So I am just smashing that on, and then we're going to see what the story is in terms of blending. But you do see a lot of pigment pretty early on, which I don't know about you, but I love that because I'm a lazy bitch and I don't want to be here for like 5 million years blending. And like, it does look quite light in the pan, but look at how much pigment you're actually getting off of that. And bearing in mind, again, obviously, this is an arm. It's not the same texture as an eyelid, so take all of this with a pinch of salt. It is just to give you a little bit more information as to how these might operate and blend. It's not going to be exactly the same, but I just feel I can show you this in better detail than if I had it on my eyelid. If I could film my eyelid a little bit better, then I would do that. But I can never film my eyelid properly, as anyone who has seen my very few tutorials will actually say. Now, I'm also doing this a little bit of a disservice because normally what I would do is when I take a little bit of a pigment, I would tap it off. But I just want to see what the story is here and just see how they're meshing. So just little swirlies. And it does look like it blends quite nicely, and we do get a good amount of pigment. And again, being horribly unfair, because this is not the sort of a brush that you would necessarily use to blend. This is more of like a packer brush. So I'm being very cruel, as per usual. So in a way, isn't it nice that I keep things a bit consistent here, you know? But yeah, that operates quite nicely. I now want to see, this is what I would usually do. I'm going to take a slightly more of a blendy brush. This is from the was that the Mariposa collection? And I'm going to take a little bit of that more whitey shade and a little bit more of that bluey shade. And I'm going to see how they will mesh together and can I get them to blend nicely. Oh, look at that. Essentially an immediate blend. Ah, shut up. That's so nice and easy. Do appreciate that. And also if you see a line there that's not from the eyeshadow, that's just my veins. I'm a very veiny gal, a very veiny human. Yeah, close to death. Ugh, it's a bit creepy if you don't like that sort of thing, but there you go. Yeah, so you can see a really nice gradient. We've literally got 2 eyeshadows there, but I feel like you can see even just along that, a very, very nice gradient. Next thing I'm going to do is I have this Zoeva eyeshadow here. So I've gone from light to dark. I want to see now if I go from dark to light, what the story is. And I would generally use this 225 when putting on a black. And this is the really interesting black in that it is black, but there's little green sparkles in it. And you can't really tell when you're in specific lighting. But I just want to see how this kind of goes on. So I'm just going to tippity-tappity this on first. A little bit of kick up. But remember, what did I do? Didn't tap off. So I am essentially doing this a disservice, but I'm just trying to kind of be as almost difficult with this as possible. Because, you know, when a brand sends you PR, you don't want to be like, oh my God, falling at their feet. Because what if it isn't great? But you can see there, look at that. Really decent black with very minimum effort. So I've I normally do like to go light to dark first, but I do want to see what the story is here with going from dark to light. Just cause. I mean, why not? I can do what I like. This is my channel or something. I'm taking this Artitude Cosmetics brush. It was part of the Metamorphosis collection, if I remember correctly. And I want to go into that sort of red matte, because obviously we're starting off first just to see how the mattes interact with each other, because you can have all these beautiful shimmers, but if they're not operating well with the mattes, or the mattes aren't there, I mean, it'll only get you so far, you know. So I'm again doing a little bit of a disservice. You wouldn't normally pack on these sort of shades with these brushes. However, I am showing you how I would do things, because I'm a lazy bitch, and when I'm doing my makeup in the morning to go to work, I just can't be spending hours blending things out or packing things on. I'm just like, okay, if I can just use one brush here and then there's less that I have to wash later, that would be fantastic. Can I just do it this way? So yes, I know I'm not using things in the correct way, but I'm using them how I would typically use them, in a way that is meant to make my life a little bit easier. But look at that. I started from light to dark. I went from dark to slightly lighter, and you can see that they do mesh actually pretty darn well. So the blending, very, very easy. And I did go obviously for this one with two colors that are related, but black and red, not related at all. And actually that black has like greeny sparkles in it that you will probably see later when we mess around a little bit further. But a really nice little meshing there, really nice little blend. No major issue there. I'm also going to be naughty and bring it around there just to see. You know how you would with like an eye look? You'd maybe kind of do it around there like that, just to be a little bit zazzy. Zazzy? Jazzy? Who knows? But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that. I feel like that works pretty nicely. I can't help but look at these deeper shades. I just think they're really interesting. I'm going to use this EDY London. It's a 21 and I'm going into that grey. Don't judge me. Or maybe do. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Look at how good that grey is. Now it comes on with a lot of pigment. Let us see if we can actually manage to blend that out. Again, what did I do? Didn't tap it off. Being naughty. But let's see how far this will actually extend. Just how much bang are we getting for a buck, etc., etc. But look at, oh, Jesus Christ. That is going quite the length, isn't it? It's a very pigmented, deep dark shade. And you could see how it could be linked in there with that one, but it's still different enough that I'm like, okay, I see the purpose of you being in here. And that was just from one tap into the pan. We got a lot of colour from that. Personally, I think that's pretty good. I'm not even going to tap it off because, again, I'm being naughty. Because sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I forget to tap off when I'm doing my makeup in the morning because I'm so tired. So I'm kind of showing you the disaster that is me in the morning of just kind of going, I don't know what's happening. Are these my legs? And even with a cup of tea, I think I'm actually not a full human being until about 4 p.m. in the day. And also when I went off, and like the last that I was filming was being outside being outside and showing you the palette outside. There's been about 2 hours since that, because as is typical for me, I got distracted and ended up doing other things because I'm a fool. So yeah, just know that you're watching this all edited down and it makes it seem like I just wandered from one scenario into another, but I didn't. So look at how nicely that blends out. I do appreciate that. Now, I'm going to be naughty again and choose something that is not necessarily a colour that would go with it, just to see, to really put it through its paces. I'm using a Spectrum B06, and this is more of a light fluffy brush. You wouldn't necessarily, again, pack on colour with this, you'd blend it, but this is what I do when I'm lazy. So I just want to see how these are going to mesh with each other. Just see the story there. And is it going to be done easily, or would I just be like, oh fuck? Because to be fair, are these colours related to each other in any sort of way? No, they're not. But, Jesus, it's kind of hard to tell where one ends and the other one begins already. And I've done F all with that. And remember that this one is not like a Pacquioni brush. That's right. We only use the technical terms over here. This is meant to be a blending brush. And yet we got a lot of pigment with that. A lot of pigment. So that's actually, whew, that's really good. So it is primarily a dark palette, but you can see you do have some light. So actually, speaking of that, let us go back into some more lighty shades here. And actually, I feel like really pissing about with this one. So by the way, in case you're wondering, it's another Spectrum A12. I have several of these. I do like these. So just tippity-tappity on. I do think, as I said before, this would be a lovely blush, wouldn't it? Just the juxtaposition against this and all the other shades is really, really interesting. Massive amount of pigment straight away. Oh, that's a nice easy one, isn't it? Oh, I like that. Very, very easy one to work with. Lovely. Now, again, going to be naughty, and I'm taking an Artitude Cosmetics. It was part of, I think, the Phoenix collection. Very nice one. And I am just going into that shade there, and I'm just going to tippity-tappity and just see how well these mesh with each other. Oh, you can see a little bit of a difference between the two shades, but obviously the way that I'm putting this one on is a little bit lighter, and they do mesh into each other very seamlessly, or at least I think they mesh in quite seamlessly. Like, I don't know, it's like, I'm quite happy with that. And if you disagree, that's fine. You're allowed to. That is your prerogative. You live your life in the way that you want. But look at how quick that was. Oh, I love a good quick blend. And we'll finish off maybe. I'll be a bit naughty again. I'll use another Artitude one, again from the Metamorphosis collection. And I'm going to go in with that deep dark one, just because I want to see what the story is there. If I'm meshing the light with the dark, can we get that to work? Now, this is a pack of honor. That's right. Again, technical terms, my goodness. You learn so much with me. Let's see how they mesh with each other. Now, it packs on quite the punch. But again, this is not the brush necessarily to blend. So let's get a proper blender brush. I'm going to use a Cosmic Brushes one. And it's clean, by the way, in case you're wondering. Haven't taken any extra product on it. And just swishy, you know. Technical terms only. Swishy, blendy, twirly, backy forthy. Just add a Y onto whatever it is that you're doing. You know, twirly, spinny. And those are the technical terms. So that does actually blend quite well. Like, it does catch some of the texture, but remember, this is an arm. And I'm a human being. It just is what it is. If you're lazy like me, can't be bothered to be waiting forever, take your blendy brush, take the last shade, last two shades that you're trying to get to blend, and just put them on the brush together and just do swishy. It'll just make it a bit easier to blend the two together, is essentially my advice to you. But you can see, like, the sort of brush that you're using is going to impact the way that it comes on, so I'm hoping this is at least a little bit helpful. But you can see the gradient, and that's across just 3 shadows. So I think that's quite useful, at least for me. I find that useful. If you don't, I'm very, very sorry. What a shit channel it is. Now, when I am applying shimmers, I will normally go in with my fingers. And yes, they are clean. I promise. I washed them. So I'm going to take this shade here. It has a little bit of a pinky undertone. And I'm just going to meh here. And I'm going to tap that just there, because that's the way that I like to tap. Just like to do that. I know some people like to swipe. I'm just showing you my personal preference, because at the end of the day, these are my things, and I will do things in the way that suits me. And even here, I'm starting to see how that is building up so beautifully. That's just a gorgeous shade. Ugh, how dare you? How very dare you? And I'm going to go into this shade here. It's the deep blue purpley one. And just tap that and see how the two of those mesh. Oh, shut the front door. That is gorgeous. I think that is beautiful anyways. So what I'm going to do is just take a little blendy brush here. It's a Colour Drain one. And I'll take a little bit of this, the same little pinky one, and just filter it around there like that so that they're meshing together. Ugh, I love that. And I'll be disgusting and go back into the blue because I can do what I like. Yay! I mean, within reason. I can't do everything I want because, you know, some things are off the table. But that's quite nice. I mean, I have a lot of lights on here right now, so you're not going to see the full picture, but hopefully it's giving you some level of context. And now I think I'm going to go in with this shade here to see what the story is and how I could apply that there and how it's going to interact, just because. I mean, why not? There's a lot, it's a very matte heavy palette, which I personally like, and the mattes do perform very well. But I do want to see how they interact with each other. And I'm going to use, ooh, yes, this shade. That's such an interesting one. And just tap that along the edge there. Oh, that gives such an interesting dimension. I really like that. So again, to kind of smooth it out, I'm taking this Gloss Gods, it's the M10, and I'm going back into that shade there. Just take a little bit more shims. Again, technical terms. And just lightly sweep. Sweepity, sweepity. There we go. Just to make it a little bit more gentle. And then, without cleaning the brush, because I mean, I'm getting them to interact anyway, so it's not a big deal. And just smash that there. So I think that's looking quite interesting. We'll see what the story is, obviously, once we start messing around with lights again. And now what you see, we're at the point where I've used a lot of these. I've used 4 out of the 5 shimmers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one again, but we're now on a deeper, darker shade. And I want to see what that's going to look like here versus here under a lighter shade. Just because. Science. We want to see what the story is. And I think even here, you can kind of see the pink sparkles a little bit clearer because you have a deeper, darker base on that. So you're going to get a slightly different effect there, which, again, I always appreciate. I like having bang for my buck just to see what the story is. And I think here in this instance, I might want to see maybe this shade, just to see what that would look like if I apply it onto this one, because it's such a different sort of a shade. Like, it doesn't necessarily mesh. I just want to see what's it going to look like, because I have the intrigue. I actually think they look quite interesting together. And I'm now taking an M06 Gloss Gods and I'm going back into that shade. I'm going to end up panning that, I can tell. Like, I'm like, ooh, I like you very much. I would swipe right on you if you were on apps. Not that I'm on apps, but you know, like, hypothetically. But, ooh, that is looking pretty nice. We can gently swish that out. Definitely, though, I think you can see the pinky sheen on that a lot more with the dark base than on the lighter one. And then I used this one. So let's go back in there with that and just swishy swishy with reckless abandon because we can. Why not? Why not? Now, the only shimmer that I haven't looked at thus far is that silver. So let's see if we can disperse that, because, like, I think a lot of people would think about going quite heavy with that, but I don't think you necessarily have to. You know, you could just pop it on like that. And I want to take this shade again because I put it onto the black, but I want to see if I have a slightly different base. This is more rusty toned, and just to see if that is going to give us a slightly different effect. Just because I think a lot of these things can be quite transformational. And I now have a Spectrum A29 and I'm going into that little silver bit and just very lightly dusting it. Like I'm an archaeologist on a fabulous dig. I always thought I wanted to be an archaeologist, but I'm not really great with like dirt and stuff. It's just a texture thing, like a sensory thing. But it looks so cool. And then back into this shade and just swish it out. swishy, swishy, swishy. So obviously here, as we're looking at it, it's looking a little bit damp. Why? Because we have a lot of lights on. I have a ring light and I have 2 box lights. And in order to see what these would actually look like in lower level lighting, I'm now going to piss about, as is my wont. And I'm going to turn off the ring light and all the other bits and see what the sparkles are like here and see what the shifts are like. So we're back in the darkness again and I'm messing about with my phone light, and I don't know what you think, but Jesus Christ, look at those. Right, you can see them under all the different bases and all the different finishes. Let's mess around with where the light is. And that's how you would actually have it on your eyes. I, again, don't know about you. Maybe you don't like things that blow socks off. But I think this is stunning. Like, I think this is just such an interesting mix of ways that you could do that. Like, I could see people putting those colour combinations together. It just looks really beautiful to me. Again, I'm going to just mess around about where the direction of the light is. Going to keep my arms static. And I just think that's beautiful. Bring you in there and you can see some of these. Twist my arm. This happens every fucking week when I do this. I'm like, I'm in pain. Why have I done this to myself? But this is how you would probably wear these things. And I don't know about you, but there's definitely some shades in here that are very much appealing to me. And some colour combinations, particularly the second from the wrist, that red and black combination. Like, I'm loving that with those shimmers. I may have to do something like that for work actually this week because it looks so cool. Ooh, yeah, actually I'll keep you updated. I'll put a picture up onto YouTube like I did last week so you can see what it looks like in natural light on the actual face. But yeah, this is what it would look like if you were blending, etc. And I think it's gorgeous.
And I realised that I was just showing you that on the Canon, and sometimes my phone picks it up a little bit better. So this is how it would look like, or how it would look. And you can see all the different sparkles and dimensions here. I think they just look so beautiful. Oof. I like some of these combinations quite a bit, to the point that I'm like, I may have to try some of these on my eyeball. And I wouldn't have necessarily, like, I went for stuff that didn't necessarily go together. So I think this is a quite exciting one. But yeah, very pretty.
I mean, I know that I have a tendency to go a little bit OTT. I probably do a little bit too much on Swatching Sundays, but I do feel like it's the most accurate way of actually looking at a palette. Like, swatches don't lie. I can have all of the, like, plum-mossy language, which is, by the way, an Irish word. Look it up. And I could do all of that, but swatches are not going to lie. And I feel like they're going to give you the most accurate indication as to what these look like. Now, in the interim, I was actually talking to my friend Daniela, who also got these. Now, she purchased them herself, and I love hearing what she has to say. And I'm inclined to agree with her on this. The kind of shimmers that are in there, they appear like they're thick, which normally means they're going to give you a little bit of texture. I'm almost quoting her verbatim on this, but they don't actually give you a lot of texture. You can tap them out, as you could see there, but you could also build them up, as you could see in the swatches. So there's a lot of versatility with this. I also, of course, didn't use any sort of glitter glue primers, and you could see there wasn't any sort of major fallout there. The versatility of this, I think, is really, really interesting. Like I said, the fact that you have half of the palette essentially being quite warm toned, this part up, and then half of the palette is quite cool toned, so this part down. I do think it works really well with the other palette as well. I will say I've pretty much bought, I want to say almost everything from Cheeryep. Probably not quite everything in terms of the palettes, but I don't think there's been a single dud that I've got so far. Freya just did this exceptionally well. I do have to say, again, I know I started with a thank you, but I'm going to end with a thank you because that's how my parents raised me. Massive thank you to cbeauty Mall, who very, very kindly gifted this to me. I hugely appreciate it. If anybody wants to see pictures of this on the eye, I will probably post something during the week, either on YouTube or on Instagram, just so you can see what this looks like. But I have used this already. and I am pretty impressed. I do think it's quite nice. But my gorgeous friends, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Do please like, comment and subscribe. Turn on that notification bell. And do please share, because sharing is caring, except of course for STDs, in which case just wrap it up. Don't be gross. But that's it. That's the end of the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.